Welcome to The Unbridled Woman with your host, Deanne Rose. Dive deep into the essence of your feminine light, harness the strength that lies within, and rise beautifully into your authentic power. Now, here's Deanne.
Hello, Unbridled Women. It's so good to be here live with you on this beautiful, beautiful day. Oh my goodness. And an unbridled man. Well, I might have my first male guest here, so I'll be introducing him shortly. But today we will be breaking the silence, and this we are actually here to really clear any ambiguities that we have between the divine masculine and how men are showing up in the life of us women and the world. And I'm really excited to really dive a little bit more deeper into this with my wonderful guest here. I'm so used to saying beautiful because I have mostly women on. My handsome cavalier knight coming on here. So let's begin this episode here with just an opening blessing. May we open this episode with grace and purpose, inviting in women from all walks of life. May this episode be a source of inspiration and empowerment, providing a platform for voices that have been unheard for so long. May our listeners find solace, encouragement, and strength as they engage with the stories and insights shared on this episode, knowing that they are not alone in their experiences. May the Unbridled Woman be a force for positive change, breaking down barriers and stereotypes, and fostering a community of support and empowerment for women everywhere. So I invite everyone here, if you're able to just close your eyes, and we're going to take some 3 deep breaths together. So as you inhale, feeling your lungs expand, open, and then slowly releasing everything out, noticing your body soften. Inhale. Feel your body on your chair, on your seat, wherever you are. Maybe you're standing. You feel your feet on the floor. And slowly exhale, letting go any stagnation that's in your body. And one more, probably the deepest breath that you have taken all day long. Inhale. And then hold for just a couple seconds. And then allow everything to just flow off of you, just like rain on a raincoat slicker, just falling and coming into that presence and the softness. And before we officially begin, giving a big shout out to my sponsor, Native Path. They are offering a wonderful, wonderful discount on their products for this show. They have been such a support for the Unbridled Women. So please check them out to take advantage of their offer, especially on their collagen, which has kept me looking very young at 55. So I'm excited now and honored to introduce my guest for today, Jake Trigg. Jake Trigg is a recognized expert in joy. How wonderful is that? Having learned it the hard way, going from suffering through a lifetime of complex PTSD, anxiety, addiction, and depression to being peaceful, joyful, and expressed. Jake is a best-selling author, a coach, a speaker, and founder of Yoga for Joy and the WAE of Emotions. Jake has helped over 10,000 people create more peace and joy in their lives and relationships. He has worked with companies such as Amazon, Google, Meta, Twitter, IBM, and Hyatt, and is a popular podcast guest known for his spiritual and practical approach to fatherhood, masculinity, emotions, and mindsets. He's going to be sharing a bit about his journey in remembering, reclaiming, and rising, and giving us a new perspective from the viewpoint of the divine masculine. Welcome, Jake. So wonderful to have you here.
Hello, Deanne. Hello, every listeners, viewers. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yay. So we're going to take this first half to dive into your unbridled story. I think it's going to be a really great experience, especially for our women listeners, to and I'm sure they're going to resonate. It's nice, I think, for women to be able to resonate with experiences that men are having, so we don't feel so different from each other. That we are all one. We feel similar things, and so I'm really excited to dive a little bit more deeper into your story. And then on the second half of our time together, yeah, Jake and I will be delving deep into the realm of masculinity, and we're going to celebrate and understand the divine masculine within men. So, my dear friend Jake, what does the word unbridled mean to you?
Yeah, well, first I wanted to mention that beauty. I would take that as a compliment. I think beauty is very similar to love. Like love
Mm,
is unconditional. It exists without any conditions. And beauty is like that as well, where you have beauty lies within that dark or the light. And there's beauty is really like all encompassing. And so I know it's not like a traditional male term, but I think I'm here to sort of break down those stereotypes and acknowledge the beauty that is around us everywhere in so many different forms.
oh, yeah, I love that. Yes, thank you. Thank you for describing that. That feels so much better. Thank you.
I also like chivalry or knight, and those are great terms too. Those feel great also.
Yeah,
So what does unbridled mean to me?
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's certainly freedom. I have a program called Free to Choose, and we were given free will. That's really what makes us human. God gave us free will, and there's a lot of things in society and programs that we learn that can strip us and take away this freedom without even realizing it, like within our diets and within our habits and
Mm,
those sort of things. And so unbridled, you gave that metaphor of the horse, of really running without the bridle and being so free. And I think a lot of that too, and that horse is like a wild nature to it as well. So having like the permission and the support and tools to really like embrace that wild side, which to me is really lying in the realm of the emotions.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. And I love the like just being wild, but I love you were like the support, because what it reminds me of is, like we can be, wild, and like then we're out of control, and then we end up, hurting others, like a wild horse when it's out of control. However, when it does tap into its wildness in a supportive way, in like giving the tools, like you said, to really connect with it, that not only supports the person themselves, but also the community and society around them as well.
Yeah, and I think that's so critical when we talk about male and female dynamics or relations, where a lot of men see emotions as wild, and women are naturally, I believe, more connected with emotions than men, whether that's societal or nature. I don't know, it could be both. Um, and so that wild aspect, women can be kind of said they're wild, right? I think so many women have been told like that they're too much, where men often feel that they're not enough. And so we have this binary that's in play, and if we can, as men, if we can connect to our emotions and actually understand the safety within that wildness, then that allows us to relate to women in such a more powerful way, because there's so much that men can provide to women, in the realm of emotions, and in the realm of being the rock and really the pillar, and structure, so that women can be so free and flowing and connected to the essence of life.
Right. Yes. So they're not seen as too much, because the man is able to actually be more connected to his emotions. So he's not, I would just imagine, because if you're not connected to something, when you see something in like you call it, in excess, it could be a little scary. You don't know how to handle it because you don't know how to handle it within yourself.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things of shadow work, is really catchy these days, right? I talk to a lot of people that are like, I want to do shadow work. And one of the clearest ways to do that is when you see something that you don't like in somebody else, then that's probably your own shadow being reflected, because otherwise you wouldn't recognize it. And people are these mirrors for us in order to see the parts of ourselves that we don't are not necessarily able to see.
Absolutely. I think I just saw something the other day. It reminded me what you just said was people are put in our life not for us to change them, but for them to help change ourselves.
So,
Sometimes
so
we get that
true.
backwards.
So true. And I think men especially are like that. We are really about seeing and the sort of like external of striving and providing and reaching out and hunting. And so all of these sort of outward ways
Yeah.
is sort of the male's approach. And so it can take a big event that happens, or special training, or maybe the right friends that or education, that men are able to then look more inward,
Mm,
um, and then be able to be the change that they seek in the world, and able to change it within themselves.
mm. Perfect. I think that's a perfect segue into your story.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
yes, share your unbridled story.
I'd love to share it. So, yeah. So for me, it was really life took a very drastic turn about 3 years ago. Okay, it's been almost 4 years now. So I was riding my bicycle home from work one day, and a car was driving towards me, and then turned and hit me. And so I fell over and smashed the windshield and fell down onto the ground and
Oh my God.
blacked out. Um, and then when I eventually awoke, the ambulance was already there, and I was just in this incredible pain. This bone had actually shifted and was over my heart. Um,
Oh,
and
your arm, your
my arm bone right here
humerus.
just totally
Hmm.
snapped. Yeah, you know the scientific name. Nice.
Well, I'm a massage therapist by training, so yes.
So the bone was shifted, and that's actually a hint towards where my progress would go. But I was in this just severe pain, and went to the hospital and had surgery for it. And um, when I was being wheeled into the emergency room, I remember making a joke because I was on ketamine. They gave me ketamine because I couldn't have any pain meds.
Okay.
Um, because of potential spinal injury. And so I was looked around and I said, "Is this heaven in here? It's so light and clean in the operating room." And the doctor said, "Don't worry about that. You won't remember any of this."
Hmm.
And I passed out, came to, and and it was I'm pretty sure I died in that somewhere near death experience, because when I came back, I was very different. I was a different person. And um, I, the biggest thing, and immediately, I mean, there was so much incredible pain, which was its own teacher. And I had lost my breath too, or I could hardly breathe at all, and was using like a breathing thing to measure it and make sure that I could do it.
Hmm.
Um, and I, yeah, but I, even despite all that, I had this like renewed like appreciation for life. Like it felt like I was given a second chance.
Hmm.
And so despite all that pain and despite all that, I was very like happy. And that some of that might have been the pain meds.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't think that was it. Um, and so it ended up taking a lot to recover, but the story continues as this recovery. Um, I went home, and I was married at the time, and I had my two sons were at that time like 2 and 4, so
Okay.
still very young.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the sole breadwinner for the family, and so for me, I couldn't use my arm at all. So there was a lot of anxiety around money and how would I be able to provide, and all of that. And it was 2 weeks after I got home that my ex-wife sat down on the end of the bed and said she didn't trust me.
Hmm.
And that was such a huge shock to me, because I thought I had done everything right. Like we were in therapy, we were doing like all kinds of stuff, and it had never come up. I never had any reason why that I understood at the time, and I see it now. It was my own trust. It was an internal thing. Um, so when she said that, it was really, that was a rift. That was a huge rift in our relationship. And I could still hardly move. I was reliant on her to feed me, to live. And so it was the one person that I needed, said they didn't trust me. So that was a blow. And then after that, about 2 weeks later, COVID started. And so that was three just rather traumatic events, in addition to having these kids under 5, which itself is a trauma of some kind, all within a very short amount of time. And so we ended up separating. So we were like, because we weren't getting along very well. I wasn't healing very well under the stress of all of that. And my programming said to like go be by myself in order to heal myself. And so I did that. I got another apartment, and we ended up getting a divorce, but we did a trial separation for a while there. And it was during that we sold a house, and we sold a house together, and she took all that money and put it into a bank account all by herself. So that was another betrayal. It was just
Mm-hmm.
it was just one thing after another, after another, after another. And that it broke me. It really broke me. And so at this point, had another place, and I really didn't want to live at that. Like I didn't. There was a part of me that didn't want to live, right?
Yeah.
And there was a moment where the shift happened. So that's the story of like the downfall, and that's a very quick overview of it. But the downfall, and it was actually a moment of prayer, and I was in so much pain. I just prayed. I was like, dear God, please help me to feel better. Of course I was bawling at this time, and but those words, feel better, are key. And then I'll dedicate my life to your service if you can do this for me. And that was a shift. Like there was an energetic shift that happened in that moment. And it was after that, that was really the bridle coming off, right? So up until then, I was living in these programs of what life should look like. It should be married, have a house, 2 cars, a certain number of kids, and I had attained, success on all these accounts, and yet things still weren't working.
Right.
And it's really interesting to think about how the body and these accidents or these things that happen are clues, right? Because I do believe that we create all of this and we choose all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And so the shoulder, the left side represents feminine, and it represents authority, like the weight of the world on our shoulders. And so I had a break with feminine authority, which was represented in my mother and then my ex-wife. And then the bone was pointed to the heart. So it was like, okay, so that's the path that I should be taking. It's like, go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's no mistakes.
Right? It's so obvious now, but at the time. And then whenever she said, when she said she didn't trust me, that was because I didn't trust the feminine. Because when I was a baby, and throughout my young childhood, my mom would hit me and yell at me. And that gave me some beliefs that the world isn't safe because the mother represents the world. I mean, you're literally in the womb, which is the whole world where you come from. And she wasn't safe because of her traumatic upbringing. So I believed that the world wasn't safe, and I believed that my voice wasn't safe as well. And those beliefs influenced my thoughts and influenced my emotions and influenced my behaviors and created my reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can see it now just crystal clear how I felt so unsafe in work and so unsafe in all of these things. And I had built up these habits that are so common for men of video games and pot and porn to really avoid those beliefs and that underlying pain because I didn't know about it. And those mechanisms, they served to protect me at the time in a way. I don't think that there's very much service in some of these. And so that's really what I'm committed to is helping men break free from especially from porn, but
Mm-hmm.
also from other habits, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I'm losing where I was at in that story now.
Well, you were getting more clear
Yeah,
as
yeah,
time went on about how the body, your injuries were showing you the way
yeah.
to your healing and transformation.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, so it was really after that moment of prayer, then it was that I started finding coaching, and I got some coaching around some programs about the masculine, especially
Mm.
because it made me think like, what does it really mean to be a man? Like we don't get training on this
Yeah, right. Yeah.
in school. And so there's a lot of great resources and people that teach masculinity, and so I found that to be a very valuable framework. And then that was like my entry point into finding coaches. And then those coaches shared tools that were really the game changers. And so one of them was identifying the beliefs. Um, and once I identified those beliefs, it's like when you can bring something to light, when you bring that shadow to light, then the consciousness can change it alone. You don't have to do anything. Of course, there's tools and ways to make that change happen faster. But changing the beliefs was like step one, and I still felt awful. And that was the clue where it was for me, it became about emotions.
Mm.
And I learned from coaching and various and tantra and various IFS and a lot of different practices about the somatics, like ways of somatically clearing and feeling emotions.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest shift, like the biggest energetic shift. Um, for me, the moment of prayer was like the down and then up. And then the up was when I learned about the emotions, it was just like skyrocket. Because when I was able to and not just sit with, but actually like channel, I say channel. I don't like this word mastering emotions. It's like an outdated term.
Huh?
Um, because I believe emotions, energy, and motion are meant to move through our body and circulate in various ways. And so these energies in motion, these emotions, are channeled. Um, and so when I learned to do that in ways like hitting pillows and yelling, like these healthy ways of expressing emotions, um, these addictions just like pretty much stopped overnight. Like there's a long tail for some of them, but the shift was like it was amazing because it was the emotions is what I was running from.
Yeah.
I was using pot porn, gaming, and other things, and food, and all whatever it is,
Mhm.
um, to avoid the pain that I was feeling. And that's so many men are in this position
Mm.
um, because we were taught that emotions aren't our thing, basically. Um, and yeah, so from there, I was able to synthesize all these tools and all this stuff. And I'm very much a process thinker.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I synthesized that down to three letters, the way of emotions, WAE, which is a book. It's a children's book, and it got bestseller status on Amazon in US and in Canada when it came
Oh,
out.
yeah.
And that was really like the way of emotions was kind of my gift back in a way. I really wanted to help my own children to be able to give them and other kids the tools early on, because
Mhm.
if we can start these dialogues and help them when those programs are being set, which is primarily before the age of 7, is where most of our programs happen. And then after 7, we're just these like robots
Yeah.
in these programs. So if I can change things for children, was my thinking at the time, and then it led to so much more. But if I can change it for them, then I can change the world. And it was also a really huge act of healing my own inner child, because I put in the
Yeah,
book,
it
I
must
made
have been.
myself the main character. And it's a story within a story, kind of like Princess Bride. Um, but yeah, so for me, it was really like giving my own inner child the tools, and then rewriting that timeline.
Yeah, just reparenting yourself, right?
Exactly, which
Yeah.
what kids are so good at doing for us. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so the unbridled part of that is like, now I help people with emotions so regularly. Like I just did it this morning. One of my best friends, his grandmother passed away, and was able to sit with him and actually ask some really powerful questions, that he was able to connect with her spirit as she's transitioning here. Um, and because these emotions I felt unbridled, I feel free, because there's no fear. There's no fear. Uh, there's still feelings that come up, and I may be afraid of something, but I know what to do. And so, like with anger, with any of this stuff, it's just charges. Um,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
and so there's a lot of liberation that happens from that.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, because I mean, just being out in the world, we're getting charged with different things. But having the awareness of, and the tools, like you said, of just letting it go from the body instead of storing it. And then, there's a saying I heard once, if you push it down, it comes out sideways, right? So, that's what when you were talking, like, pushing down all these emotions coming out sideways in your life was, the video gaming, the porn, that's how it was being expressed.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Thank you much for sharing that. I resonated with so much of not being able to express my emotions, especially anger. I think a
Mhm.
lot of women as well. So we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into more empowering conversations that we're going to uplift, inspire, and celebrate the divine masculine. So stay tuned, everyone, with my beautiful guest, Jake. And thank you so much for listening. You are appreciated, and we will be right back. Thank you.
Welcome back to The Unbridled Woman with Deanne Rose. Have a question for Deanne or her guests? Join us on the show at 888-346-9141. That's 888-346-9141. Or email Deanne at theunbridledwomanrises@gmail.com. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to The Unbridled Women. I am Deanne Rose, and I am here with the inspiring Jake Trigg, who has been sharing his story on his embodiment of the divine masculine and feminine. And for the rest of our journey together, Jake and we're going to begin to explore the balance between strength and vulnerability, leadership, compassion, and how men can tap into their inner power while fostering harmonious relationships with others. So we'll do a little definition of what the divine masculine is. But before we get into that, I want to backtrack a little bit more, Jake, to what you were talking a little bit more about. I'll call that when your emotions were being so suppressed, you were, you saw that, your porn, I guess addiction in a way, is that a good word to think about?
Yeah, that's great.
Was there. And so and you shared how when you were able to really start somatically expressing these emotions, those addictions, just started to slip away. They no longer were taking hold of you. So how can you share a little bit more of how you work with men right now with porn? And because I think it'd be very, I'm sure there's a lot of women out there who have partners who watch porn, and they might not feel really good about that. They might feel like maybe they watch too much, but now giving them the understanding of why these men might be doing it and how they can actually support their partner into healing from this.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think that shifting how porn is used is one of the greatest things that we can have in our society because of how it impacts relations,
Mm.
and also because how it impacts personal power and energy. Um, because what porn does is it takes this energy that we are meant to be using as our vital creative force, and in relation, and it just wastes it. It's sort of like being in a beautiful garden and watering a plastic palm tree.
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
Like you have all this water, and that palm tree is not going to, it's
Right.
plastic.
Yeah.
Um, and so porn is just pixels, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, but I think one of the key things that I start from is really removing the shame from porn, because shame is such a it's such a powerful emotion, um, in bringing, like, harming relationships, right? Because if someone feels shame and they're not sure what to do with it, the right thing to do is to restore integrity. So when we feel shame, it's a sign that we can restore our integrity in some way,
Mm.
whether that's like setting a new boundary or making a new commitment or something like that. But for men that are in the grips, pardon the pun, of heavy porn usage, um, uh, there can be a lot of shame, and especially with a partner too, because we know instinctively, subconsciously, that we should be having these relations with our partners, right?
Right.
Women can feel that too, and the reason that happens is because porn is so easy, and we're just not taught communication skills, and we're not taught relational skills. Like when I found the world of Tantra, it's like, wow, this can be so easy. Like we can really just relate to each
We
other.
could talk, right? We use our voice. And
We
yes.
can talk about desires. Yeah, it's just having the right. So like people just need, because we go through school and we learn all the right ways and the right ways, and it zaps us of our creativity, and so we still can use the structure of how to like phrase things,
Mm.
which is really helpful. But anyway, so with porn, so removing the shame of it is kind of the first step. And I think what's helpful to understand there is that most addictions, as I see it, happen because boys don't have rituals on how to become men.
Mm-hmm.
Society doesn't have rituals anymore. Um, we go to class and we pass, and we get into another grade, and then we go to college or we get a job, and there's no.
Right. Yeah. There's no, what was that called? The Native Americans were doing
Mhm.
that. Like, it's like a rite of passage, or you're going on a vision quest or something, right? Just,
Yeah,
hmm
exactly. There's so many ancient cultures that have these rites of passage or rituals, that signal and help boys become men. And that's one of the reasons why I am a leader in a men's group and so committed to men's work, because that is helping grown boys become men.
yeah.
Um, and so a lot of addictions, they start so early. And this is true for men and women. Like as I've gotten into the space of talking about porn, I'm often talking with women that start very young. I met one the other day that started for her at 12 years old.
Mm.
Um, and so instead of having these rituals of connection, because that's ultimately what we're desiring, is connection with other people, which then stimulates and gives us, our brain gives us reward of dopamine and serotonin, these reward mechanisms. Because we don't have the natural way of doing that, we are now coming to these unnatural ways, of substances.
Right.
Um, and porn is, basically like, it's basically like a substance in excessive dopamine. And so what happens whenever we see a potential mate, our brain is like, here's some dopamine so that you can like how, feel better and potentially meet this person.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and with the way that porn is nowadays, a man can see more potential mates within like 30 minutes than they would have seen their entire lifetime. And so for our primitive brain, that's a lot of dopamine.
Wow. That's overload.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's happening at this very young age as our
Hmm.
brain is still forming.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Yeah.
right. And so it's a really hard challenge in until you can bring awareness and the tools to handle it and support. Um, so that's happening in the brain. It's getting too much dopamine. And so what I've learned about addiction from yoga, there's this concept that an addiction is about two things. There's the self or the substance. And addiction isn't caused by the self because the self is perfect and whole. Addiction is caused by that substance. And it's
Hmm.
the presence of the substance within the body that causes the addiction and causes the wanting more of it. And so for porn, that's the like excessive dopamine and the habits of it. Um,
Right.
and so from in yoga, you can use breath. Prana is the greatest medicine. Just breath can heal pretty much everything. Now, if you want to do it faster, there's yoga techniques, and then there's modern science. There's habit change techniques as well. We know a lot about habits these days. Um, and so yeah, so going back to that, like having no shame in this, it's understanding that how it's happening at such a young age and how it's like hardwired in the brain um
Mm.
to desire more of this dopamine and then the serotonin afterwards of the reward. But most people that are deep into porn don't get any satisfaction out of it anymore. It's and so the other so so having that understanding helps to reduce the shame. And as a partner supporting somebody, it would be really just important to approach it like very compassionately,
Hmm.
and just be and asking a lot of questions with curiosity, um, and letting them know that doesn't make them a bad person at all, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
and not to take it personally. Like it's not something the woman hasn't done or she's not
mm,
attractive to him anymore. Like
yeah,
there's that this isn't an addiction and it's a mental thing where and like you said when you said they're not getting any more pleasure out of it. Yeah, because I think it gets to a point where you're just maintaining this and then I think is that when like that self shame judgment comes in when you're like really not getting any more pleasure out of it and you know you probably should stop but you just can't.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because and you can't because of how bad it feels not having the usual dopamine. and
Right.
and the not and so that brings up emotions. And so then if you have tools in order to allow yourself to feel bad and clear it, then you can get through those hard times more easily. And then I particularly use yogic techniques, and of course, there's like different diet things you can do, and exercise and breath. Um, but yeah, I think what you said about what really lands for me, what you said is women recognizing that it's not that they're not attracted anymore, because I think
Mhm.
that's where misunderstandings might happen
Yeah, like the
naturally.
defensiveness that comes up and hurt feelings and yeah, it's really
Yeah.
truly not about you.
Mhm.
No. So I've been hitting upon yoga. So I know you have is it the joy of yoga?
Yeah, yoga for joy.
Yoga
Yeah.
for joy. Okay. All right. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more of that. How did that come about?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I just see it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Good transition. Yeah. Um, so, so yoga for joy, I started. So one thing I didn't mention, after the wreck, I had part of this whole journey has been a Kundalini awakening. And for me, what that means, because it means a lot of different things for different people. For me, it means much deeper connection with energy. And so like when I first came out of the wreck, it's like all my senses were turned up to an 11. And so the pain was increased. Also, my sound, I could hear a lot. I had tinnitus, and I was just sensing everything and like smelling everything. Like it was just
Wow.
everything was a
Mm-hmm.
lot. Um, and in addition to that, my emotions were also were happening more than I ever had. And because I lived my life prior to that in a state of numbness and not even knowing that what emotions were and what to do with them. And that's because during my childhood, I kind of just shut down to protect myself.
Mm.
So anyway, so this Kundalini awakening had a lot of side effects for me as well. And when I learned what that was, I became a Kundalini yoga teacher because the energy changed my life dramatically.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm going to learn how to work with this. And because I had practiced yoga for 18 years prior to the car hitting me, and I never heard of Kundalini yoga. And it
Really?
was
Oh.
after this activation that that I became aware of it through a teacher, through Guru Singh and Brett Larkin, and then I studied to become a yoga teacher. And so I wrote The Way of Emotions last year. It's like last February, I think, is when it came out. Um, and so then the book came out, and I was like, okay, what's next? And I was studying to become the yoga teacher. And so I took the Way of Emotions, and I was like, what if I combine that with yoga? So it was an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept is something I learned from Kundalini, and Buddha has this statement that the root of all emotions lead to joy, or the root of all emotions is joy.
Okay.
Um, and so I was like, well, let me test that out. Um, and so I also learned from Huna, which is a Hawaiian word for secret. I learned from Dr. Matt James, who represents 17 generations of Hawaiian knowledge, going back 17 generations. He does a lot of work in emotional release techniques, and he has this thing, the particular order that the core negative emotions happen in. So it generally happens anger, and then sadness, fear, hurt, which people don't think of hurt as an emotion, but it is.
Yeah.
And then shame would be that one. And so that particular order, he's found from working with thousands of people, that if you go into anger and you really let it out, then that will often reveal sadness. And then if you go
Mm.
into the sadness, that will reveal the hurt. And so I was, being my process mind, I was like, okay, that's interesting. Yoga is a process. This is a process. And the Way of Emotions is a process. So I paired all those up. I was initially going to call it like yoga for emotional expression. And someone told me like, no one's going to want to take that. And so using this, like, okay, the root of all emotions is joy. If I have people use yogic techniques, like in anger, you're like punching,
Mm-hmm.
and have music that like stimulates it. So can I have people practice the Way of Emotions, doing these somatic yoga techniques, focused on the negative emotions in that order? And then when it gets to joy, just shavasana, just lay down. Like, will
Yeah.
that have an impact for people? It was just an experiment. And so I've been doing that for I started that at the beginning of this year. And every time I do the class, like people leave just like elated.
I can imagine.
And they get these like downloads. Like one person, she does Reiki, and she said she got light coats, which I didn't know that was a thing. Now I know.
Yeah.
People get like the titles of their book. This one woman said that she realized for the first time how much joy her husband brings her, and she went to call him immediately.
Oh. Brings
right?
appreciation. Wow. Yes. Yes.
And then another woman, she said, this is the first time I don't feel alone, because she'd lived her whole life not realizing that her emotions are what other people have, because she's gone to therapy and
Oh,
she's expressed all this with a therapist, but a therapist doesn't relate on the same level. They don't go into it. And so
hmm.
she felt that her emotions were too much. She felt that her emotions were different than everybody else's. And so because it was in this class, expressing it together, she didn't feel alone anymore.
You're right. Wow. That's beautiful. Do you, so just a question, do you think that through this process of releasing those emotions in that order and then coming to that joy, is that also just coming into the present moment more concretely, where you're just you're just experiencing what is right here right now, and
Mhm.
um
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do think that that's part of it. I think what's happening, there's kind of like two things. That joy is like our natural birthright. If you look into the eyes of a kid, like they're joyful,
yes.
and a baby, and we have these other emotions come up, and like you talked about earlier before the break, of like pushing them down, and then they come out sideways.
Hmm.
So we stuff it, and that covers up joy. Um, and so if you want to find joy, the task is not to seek joy, but rather to find the walls you built up against it and remove them.
Hmm. Right, because you already joy.
You are already
There's no
joy.
reason, no reason to seek it. It's in you.
Exactly. And I
Hmm.
think what you're talking about with presence is those other emotions that we've stuffed down. Some of those is like the old story that we can let go of, but the body keeps the score. And so those emotions are also stored within our nervous system.
Right.
And so using yoga is one of the most powerful ways to align and connect into the nervous and regulate the nervous system. And so that is clearing those stored emotions, um, in order to be more present. So it's like you can't. I don't think you can just be present. And I think that
Right.
there's work to be done to like clear stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. The reason why the presence came up for me was when
Yeah.
I used to do massage therapy. um, I was very present with my client, and I would just start getting downloads of different ideas and things, like, it was the most present I was, during the day. So that's when you were saying that, people getting downloads and ideas for that. I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I felt that when I am in the most present moment, and like just not focused on anything on myself, but just there,
Right.
which I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I mean, that's also, yoga does that too. Yeah, because when we and coming into the body, and allowing the body just to express what it needs to take out of. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and being the body, being so dense, there's different layers, right? We might
Mm.
think, oh, I've expressed that anger over that, well, a little bit sometimes, and there's always a different layer, because the body is the last thing to release, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Oh, so we have a few minutes left. I want to talk about what is the divine masculine? How would you define that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that the divine is really the key word there. And so the masculine is kind of understood. There's a lot of writing about it. There's some misunderstandings, of course, too, and there's like this toxic masculinity phrase. But I think where divine comes into play is a divine masculine is somebody that, divine to me means like union. And
Mm,
so it's like divine is this union between the masculine and the feminine. And so when I hear like divine masculine, I picture somebody that is masculine, but also has access to their own inner feminine energy as well.
yeah,
And I think that's the union, the divinity of being divine. Feminine would be a more feminine person knowing connection to the masculine. Um,
yeah.
and on that, like, I know we just have a few minutes left, so I'd really like to share like something that I think that men can really help women, that is kind of a different switch. So earlier I talked a lot about men being external and really like going out. There's some I learned the yoga technique, and now I practice this, of really drawing in. And so having the masculine receive from the feminine, because the feminine actually can be a spark of inspiration. If like a man looking at a woman, we're inspired, and can make us erect, right? And so it gives us energy. And if we're not constantly giving and chasing, instead we're receiving. And especially with emotions, if we can receive and ground. And so the technique there is to pay attention half to your partner and half to your own nervous system, and regulate your own nervous system.
Right.
Don't regulate their nervous system, because we don't need to change it. We don't need to fix it unless we ask for consent.
Right.
Or, so if we can regulate our system, and we can tune in and like kind of match, then that helps regulate the other person's nervous system, because women are very attentive to what is going on within our man's nervous system. And so if they can feel us regulating it, is super, super powerful. So I'd recommend that to
I
all
love
men
that. And I
everywhere.
think it brings a sense of safety as well, I believe, for both people.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Jake. This has been, I've had the best time and learned so much. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me. I'm getting a website set up still. I think you'll share some links.
Mm-hmm.
My pen name is ATX at large. So ATX at large, you can find me there on all the socials. And yeah, I think that's probably good for now. I also am starting the free to choose challenge here in the end of December. And that is specifically to help men change their relationship with porn. So you can search for free to choose as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity to share your work and your story with us. And we will be back next week with my guest, Tanji Zenrika Veloso, and we'll be talking about wealth, health, and how to create a life of freedom. Until then, be unbridled, be free. Much love